Apart from the size of the stone, which sits on Bridge Street in Montreal, it is rather unremarkable. It is black, sits on a plain cement block, and is surrounded by a short, resting iron fence. But this rock tells a remarkable story, a tragic story of immigration dating back over 150 years ago, beginning in Ireland. In 1846, 47, and 48, approximately 1 million Irish died during the Great Irish Famine. Overnight, entire potato crops would be destroyed by disease. At the time, potatoes were the sole sustenance of the poor Irish. When they couldn't pay rent due to their failed crops, they would be evicted and left to starve, homeless. Hundreds of thousands fled the country by ship to go to Australia or North America, but met a worse fate on their voyage. The ships became overrun with typhus, to the point where the boats were commonly called coffin ships. When passengers would die, they would be thrown overboard. It is unknown how many bodies were lost in the Atlantic on their way over. But the tragedy didn't stop there. Those who survived the voyage thus far came up the St. Lawrence River and landed on Montreal's shores. But many didn't make it any further, finally dying of ship fever just days or weeks after arriving. Don Pidgeon is a prominent Irish historian in Montreal.
Approximately 6,000, they say, people have died in that area and were buried as well on Bridge Street, on both sides of the road, in the cemetery area as well as the parking lot adjacent to it. Around 1859, when the Victoria Bridge was in the position of being built, the contractors and the workers found all these bodies buried underneath. And of course, the story of the tragedy of 1847 came about. While dredging the St. Lawrence River in the building of the Victoria Bridge, they dredged this black stone, removed it, and placed it in the burial area, the cemetery area. And this was the beginning of the fact that, there was a cemetery.
Despite the rock, the tragedy was forgotten, and history repeated itself 100 years later. Workers began to build a passenger tunnel leading to the bridge, disturbing the graves and once again uncovering more bodies. On the fourth Sunday of May, a Mass is held in Point St. Charles, a historically Irish neighborhood of Montreal, followed by a walk to the stone, led by a lone bagpiper, to honor the dead buried there. It has been attended by dignitaries from Ireland, including some of its presidents, but also some ordinary citizens with Irish roots trying to honor their ancestors.
We're here today just to pay homage to all the Irish that have passed away from the famine and from the fever, and we think it's important to keep this heritage alive, and it's important for my kids. I brought all 8 of them today, so I think it's important for them to understand what happened to the Irish, what happened, why the stone is here, why we come every year.
Michael Keneally is the chairman of the Canadian Centre for Irish Studies.
So the Irish community knows, but the problem is that if you were to pass by, the general public doesn't know, because there's nothing ostensibly Irish about it. There's no shamrocks, there's no harps. It doesn't even say that the 5,000 people who died were Irish. It just says they were immigrants. So it's one of those memorials which it's internally resonant, it's internally meaningful to the Irish community, and as I said, is considered a kind of a sacred place. But if you're thinking in terms of does it tell its story to other people, the answer is no.
Approximately 150,000 commuters pass this rock every day, morning and night, and most have little idea what this solemn black stone stands for, if they notice it at all.
It's a problem to remember the past because history isn't necessarily taught in all schools or in all colleges now, and that we're bombarded with so much information for everybody's narrative to fit in and to be remembered. So I think in some ways it's up to each community to try and tell and retell and highlight its narrative, because at the end of the process what you discover is that the experience, whether they're Irish or Vietnamese or Haitian or Norwegian, that their stories are very similar and they need to know their stories and share them.
And this is the strength of it. Our people have to take the initiative to remember and show that we care.
I think that they could add other things around it, maybe in a mini park that would designate it as an Irish site. It might be a Celtic cross, it might be a harp. It would be something that would signify, an icon that would signify Irishness. So at least the general public would think that site or that park has something to do with Irish immigration.
I'd say the Irish cross would be a true example of, we were here and we are still here.
The debate over this monument highlights hard questions. How do you commemorate something that is so vast but so distant? How do you maintain the honor of those who died while the modern world zooms by?